This is a video to help RiverWatch citizen scientists identify worms and crustaceans. This is a video to refresh your memory of things that you may have learned in the workshop that are useful for when you're out in the field identifying your macroinvertebrates. So for RiverWatch we have about 37 different indicators. For this video we are going to be focusing on this part, worms and crustaceans only. For worms, we have three kinds of worms for the RiverWatch Stream Quality Index: aquatic worms, flatworms, and leeches. Now, what makes it a worm is that it does not have any legs and it does not have a head capsule. The body is soft all the way from abdomen to head. Our first worm is the flatworm. You can see here what they look like from a petri dish view. Then if you zoom in to 10 times magnification and then down to 30 times magnification, the main thing to remember about flatworms is that they have no segments. It's the only RiverWatch worm indicator that has no segments, so their body is smooth. And then they have usually two eye spots if you look closely, and you can see them here in this picture. So that is the flatworm. Very flattened, no segments. Next we have aquatic worms. Aquatic worms are more cylindrical than round. This is kind of what they look like in a petri dish. They're very thin and delicate. If you zoom in to 10 times, this is what they look like. And then 30 times, this is what they look like right here. So they do have segments. Some of them will have hairs and bristles on them too. Again, no head or hard parts. That's why they're a worm. They have no hard parts. As you can see down here, I've included what an earthworm looks like. This is not what we're looking for RiverWatch. We only want to include aquatic worms. Earthworms sometimes are found incidentally in your stream site, but if you see a very thick worm like this right here with a clitellum, that's the thick band for used for reproduction. If you see that, you know it's an earthworm and not an aquatic worm, and we don't want to count those for RiverWatch. Now we're on to the leeches. This is our last worm we use for RiverWatch. They also have segments like the aquatic worm, but they're flattened kind of like a flatworm. So kind of a combination of both, but you will find suckers on each end of the worm. So segments and suckers, and usually kind of flattened. Some of them are wider than others. As you can see, this one's pretty wide and this one's pretty thin. This is kind of what several different ones that I had look like if I put them in the sorting tray. Different shapes and sizes, different colors. The main thing is you want to look for that sucker on each end of the body and segments. Now we're moving on to the crustaceans. Crustaceans for RiverWatch that we use are scuds, sow bugs, and then the rusty crayfish is a macroinvertebrate of special interest. So what makes it a crustacean? They have a hardened exoskeleton like an insect, but unlike an insect, they have 7 pairs of legs, so a lot more legs, and they don't go through the same kind of life cycle to where they metamorphose into a different form to become an adult. They stay in the same form and just keep shedding their exoskeleton as they grow. So our first crustacean we'll look at is the aquatic sow bug. These look a lot like the terrestrial pill bugs or roly-polies that many people are familiar with. This is what they look like in the petri dish, and then put them under the microscope. You can see they have many legs and then that hardened exoskeleton. So 7 pairs of legs, and then the best way to identify these guys is they're flattened back to belly, so that's dorsoventrally, so kind of flattened like a pancake. If you looked at them from the top, they would be really wide. And for the most part, these guys are pretty dark in color, gray to brownish blackish. Our next crustacean is the scud. These look like miniature shrimp. Here's some in a petri dish right here. So they're pretty small, very cream colored, a lot more pale than the sow bug. Here's what they look like under 10 times magnification. So they have 7 pairs of legs, but they're flattened side to side, so laterally. That's the opposite of how the sow bug was flattened. So that is side to side flattening for the scud. Then our last crustacean we use for RiverWatch is the rusty crayfish. This is a special interest species. It is not used for the RiverWatch stream quality calculation. We only note yes or no on our biological survey sheet if they're present in our site. As you can see here, they have rusty patches on the side of their carapace. And then if you were able to see more closely here, they have orange-tipped claws with a black band beneath that orange tip. And then again, the rusty patches on the side. These rusty crayfish are a lot more common in the northern half of Illinois than in the southern half. We usually don't find them too many south of the Illinois River. So now you can test your knowledge to see if you can identify the rusty crayfish, the scud, the sow bug, the aquatic worm, flatworm, and leech. So if you want to pause this video for just a little bit and then get out a scratch piece of paper, or just you can try to identify them mentally in your head, and just make sure that you can identify these before you're through with this presentation. So go ahead and pause the video at this time. Alright, here are the answers. A is the scud. It's the side swimmer. He's flattened side to side. They kind of curl up like this a lot and swim on their side. B is the rusty crayfish. That one's pretty obvious. He has the rusty patches on his side. He's the only crayfish in our in this presentation. C is the leech. He has segments and he's flattened. And he has a sucker here and a sucker here. And then D, going back over here, is the flatworm. He's a flattened worm like the leech, but he has no segments, and you can kind of see his eye spots there. So that's a giveaway. It's a flatworm. E, down here, is the sow bug. He's flattened back to belly, dorsoventrally like a pancake. Dark colored crustacean, so that's the sow bug. Then F, the last one, is the aquatic worm. So he's rounded, he's cylindrical. He does not have suckers on both ends. He is segmented, so that's what you want to look for. And generally, the aquatic worms are really the only worms that are that round. The leeches and flatworms are a lot more flat. So, good job. That is the end of the macroinvertebrate refresher video for worms and crustaceans.